My soon-to-be ex-spouse and I were married for 11 years without any children. As a couple, we were on the heavier side until 2 years ago when I received a blood test that revealed my susceptibility to diabetes, gout, and hypertension. This news was very alarming, and we both made a conscious effort to adopt a healthier lifestyle. My wife and I began going to a gym regularly, usually in the afternoons, where one of the coaches, whom we'll refer to as Baldy, worked. As my wife began to get in better shape, I couldn't help but notice how many guys would turn to look at her. It made me feel incredibly proud of her, as she has an impressive bust and gorgeous legs. Unfortunately, Baldy was no exception to this behavior. On numerous occasions, I caught him checking out women's backsides, and he seemed to relish showing off his own chiseled physique. During our regular gym visits, I noticed that Jane seemed to relish the attention she received from men. On one occasion, while we were both using the elliptical machines, Baldy removed his shirt and proceeded to do crossovers in front of us, using a cable machine. I turned to Jane with a disapproving look on my face, but she was staring intently at him and even licked her lips. Baldy noticed her reaction, and I could see the satisfaction on his face. I felt utterly defeated. Although I was making progress in my fitness journey, I couldn't help but feel inferior to Baldy's impressive physique. On our drive home from the gym, I made a comment about Baldy's attention-seeking behavior, but Jane claimed she hadn't even noticed. When I reminded her that she had been staring at him, she brushed it off and said she must have been distracted. Despite this, I couldn't help but notice that they began talking more frequently at the gym. A few weeks later, I watched as Jane was performing squats using the Smith machine. Out of nowhere, Baldy approached Jane and offered to assist her with her squats. I couldn't help but feel upset as I watched him place his hands on her waist. After she completed the first set, I marched over and confronted him in a not-so-friendly manner, telling him that I could take it from there. Baldy just smiled and casually replied, "No problem, buddy," before walking away. Jane knows me well, and upon hearing the tone of my voice, she suggested that we discuss the situation at home. Unfortunately, things only escalated into a dramatic argument once we got there. During our argument at home, Jane accused me of being immature and jealous. I explained that I had noticed Baldy's advances towards her and that it made me uncomfortable. She acknowledged that she was aware of his intentions, but insisted that she would never cheat on me. I questioned why she had allowed him to touch her, and she replied that she didn't want to be rude. After an hour of arguing, we ultimately agreed to switch gyms and began working out at a different location. However, Jane remained resentful towards me in the following months, claiming that I didn't trust her. It wasn't until 3 months later that she finally let go of her grudge. When a great opportunity presented itself at work, Jane and I discussed it in the afternoon, and I ultimately decided to take it. As a result, we had to start going to the gym at different times. I went in the morning, and Jane went in the afternoon. Unfortunately, this change seemed to have a negative impact on our relationship. Jane's resentment towards me only grew, and we barely spoke. I tried to keep the lines of communication open by sending her messages about my day, telling her how much I missed her and sharing funny memes, but she rarely replied. I became increasingly worried about our relationship and suggested that we try couples therapy. She suggested that I needed therapy due to my trust issues, and I concurred. I was determined to mend our marriage, even to the point of assuming all the blame. In the year 2022, I sought therapy because Jane's behavior towards me had not improved. Our intimacy had ceased, and she never seemed to be in the mood. I became suspicious and searched through her phone and car, but found nothing out of the ordinary. Upon checking her phone again, I noticed her map history only showed her going from home to work, gym, and back home. Whenever I attempted to discuss our relationship with her, she claimed to be going through a phase in her 40s. I held on to the hope that things would improve, despite having no evidence of infidelity, and continued to work and worry. Living in a condo, I frequently interacted with the cheerful security guard, Mr. Pete, who would often share stories with me. During one conversation, he mentioned having pain in his shoulder from moving a heavy sofa the day before. When I expressed sympathy for Mr. Pete's shoulder pain, he revealed a surprising piece of information. "Maybe you can arrange a meeting with your masseuse," he suggested. I then asked, "Who?" He clarified that it was the same masseuse who had visited Mrs. Jane the day before. I needed a moment to process the shocking information. "Do you have a video of him?" I asked Mr. Pete, feeling pale. He quickly retrieved his phone and showed me a video of the masseuse, who he referred to as Baldy. Of course, I thought to myself. I took the day off work and began investigating. Borrowing a coworker's car, I followed Jane in the afternoon. She parked at the mall near the gym and I saw Baldy waiting for her. They giggled and acted as if they were a couple. Tears streamed down my face as I watched Jane and Baldy exchange kisses and hugs before walking a few blocks into a residential area. I attempted to follow them while recording on my phone, but a security guard stopped me and asked if I needed assistance. I tried to play it off by commenting on what a lovely couple they made and asking if he knew them, but he could only speculate that they were newlyweds and didn't have any further information. I tried calling Jane, but she didn't answer. Confused and upset, I went to her car in the mall and wondered why that location wasn't showing up on the map. I dialed Jane's number once more and could hear her phone ringing from inside her car. Additionally, I discovered that she hadn't been to the gym in 8 months. It was only after this realization that I understood the previous night had been the last time we had slept in the same bed. Feeling lost and alone, I drove home and called my parents. Thankfully, my dad answered and I poured out everything to him, tears streaming down my face. He comforted me and advised me to gather evidence. It was clear that my marriage was over, and I needed to prepare for what was to come. As my dad contacted one of his friends who happened to be an excellent divorce lawyer, Jane called me back after seeing the missed calls. I simply told her that I was already home and she mentioned that she was on her way back from the gym and that her butt was killing her. I didn't respond much, but when she saw me, she asked why I had been crying. Despite the emotional turmoil, I managed to maintain my composure and told her that I had come down with the flu and left work early as a result. I warned her not to come near me, as it could be contagious and that I would be getting tested for it the following day. Agreeing to sleep in the spare room, Jane left me alone to my thoughts. Tears silently streamed down my face as I struggled to sleep. Sometime around midnight, I heard her giggling, and my mind immediately went to the possibility that she was messaging Baldy. However, I couldn't find any concrete evidence of her contacting another man. Suddenly, it dawned on me. Why hadn't I realized it earlier? I suspected that her affair partner might be disguised as one of her female co-workers. The next morning, while Jane was in the shower, I seized the opportunity to take her phone and create a session on my laptop. Knowing that we both had the capability to unlock each other's phones, I returned it to its original location. The session would only work if the phone was in close proximity to my laptop or connected to the same Wi-Fi account. Upon accessing her phone, I discovered a conversation with an individual under the guise of a female name, with a dumbbell as the profile picture. Most of the messages had been deleted, and I suspected they were using work-related jargon as a code in case I were to snoop. One message that stood out read, "Can you deliver the papers in my desk?" I am aware that she does not have a designated workspace at her workplace and is en route to a meeting. Do you happen to know your location? Above us are her bosses in their office. It seems they are unaware of what is happening below. I find it quite astute that I am aware of this. Perhaps it is because I know that her boss is a woman that I hold a higher position. After Jane finished her shower, she noticed me and commented on my appearance, stating that I looked worse. She then suggested that I stay with my parents. I declined the offer and dismissed the idea of gathering evidence. Once Jane left, I contacted my father, and he provided me with the contact information of a lawyer. I proceeded to call the lawyer and explained the situation in detail. He informed me that the correspondence extracted from my laptop were ineffectual and lacked any factual evidence. This was due to the fact that the affair partner's name was not mentioned, and the conversation pieces appeared innocuous. While at work, I was in a dazed state, preoccupied with thoughts on how to obtain evidence. The idea of installing covert cameras in my home crossed my mind, but I dismissed it as Baldy rarely visits, and Jane might discover them. I sent a message to Jane informing her of my certainty regarding the presence of a bug. I informed her that I would be staying with my parents as I might require their assistance. She seemed to approve of the idea and expressed that she would miss me, but promised to call me daily. After ending the call, I contacted both my father and brother. Upon arriving home, I discovered that she had already packed my suitcase, seemingly eager to get rid of me. I informed her that I would be taking my laptop with me and proceeded to check her messages. I noticed a message in which she informed Boss that she would be out of the office and invited him to her desk. After I informed her of my confidence regarding the bug, she promptly replied. It was a positive response, indicating that she was interested in the topic. We didn't share a meal, embrace, or a kiss. I noticed her checking her watch twice from the doorway. As I bid her farewell, anticipating a cold response, she surprised me by escorting me to my car before I drove away. Meanwhile, my father and brother waited outside the building, expecting Baldy to arrive, but he never showed up. After 30 minutes, it dawned on me that she walked me to my car to avoid being seen with Baldy, who was likely inside the building or possibly in her car. It would have raised suspicions if she received messages from him at that hour. Returning home, I rushed inside quietly and heard music playing from the bedroom. As I approached the door, I heard moaning sounds coming from within. A sofa in the room had his and her clothes strewn over it. I quickly took out my phone and started recording. Holding my breath, I pushed open the bedroom door and saw my wife, the woman I had loved for 11 years, with Baldy behind her. Both of them looked stunned as I caught them in the act. Jane screamed and covered herself with a blanket. I managed to capture their faces on video for a brief moment. Baldy's demeanor suddenly changed, and he became confrontational, striding towards me while yelling aggressively. In response, I instinctively executed a move I had seen in the movie Ransom starring Mel Gibson, striking his throat with an open hand. The next moment, Baldy was coughing and struggling for breath, dropping to his knees on the floor. I ordered him to leave my house immediately and forcibly kicked him out, throwing his clothes at him as he departed. Finally, I slammed the door shut. As Jane lay on the bed, trembling and covering herself, I reassured her that I had never hurt her and that I would not get dressed. Instead, I waited for her in the living room. While waiting, I sent the video to my lawyer, who replied, "I'm sorry for you, but this is a jackpot." A few minutes later, Jane appeared, unable to meet my gaze. I began recording our conversation and asked her why she had betrayed me. She remained silent, prompting me to question whether I had been a terrible husband to her. She broke down in tears but did not answer. Finally, I asked her if she loved Baldy. She shook her head, unable to find the words. After a moment, she finally spoke up. "We can work through this," she said. "What exactly can we fix?" "I knew our marriage had been on the rocks ever since Baldy came into the picture and you chose him over me. I instructed her to go to her sister's house and made it clear that if she refused, I would send her sister the video which I had secretly recorded by following her. For the past 2 days, I had been trying to come to terms with the fact that my wife was no longer the person I knew. The woman who shared my home was a stranger to me, and watching her pack her clothes neatly into a suitcase only confirmed my suspicions. Her kind gestures and the small things I cherished about her hit me like a ton of bricks. Afterwards, I reached out to my father, who informed me that Baldy was considering pressing charges. However, Mr. P informed him that Baldy had not signed in, thus he was trespassing and the condominium could take legal action against him. I had been feeling drained and restless for the past few days, unable to sleep well. The following morning, I woke up to a barrage of messages from Jane, apologizing and begging for another chance. I simply blocked her. I received a call from my sister-in-law, who informed me that Jane had not disclosed the details of our fight, only that we were having issues. It's a good thing my father-in-law is no longer alive to witness Jane's behavior, as she was his favorite child despite being the youngest. Unfortunately, my mother-in-law suffers from senile dementia. This all happened a week ago, and Jane is set to be served next week. As for an update, yesterday morning I visited my former gym without being certain if I would run into Baldy, who works in the afternoon. However, given that Baldy had been having an affair with my wife during his afternoon shifts, I suspected he may have changed his schedule. To my dismay, he was nowhere to be found. I then requested to speak with Frank, the gym owner, and inquired about Baldy's whereabouts. Frank informed me that Baldy had requested more hours and was now working from Tuesday to Sunday in the morning, with Monday being his day off. I then proceeded to explain the reason for my visit and showed him the incriminating video. Frank listened attentively until I had finished speaking and then uttered the words, "You're not going to like this." At that moment, I couldn't help but wonder what other bombshell was about to drop. Frank summoned Harry, another coach and Baldy's friend, to join us in the conversation. Harry disclosed that Baldy was completely smitten with Jane, which Frank confirmed. However, what Harry revealed next left me in utter shock. Baldy was attempting to trap Jane into marriage by impregnating her. We then discussed the possibility of terminating Baldy's employment, and Frank informed me that he would have to report the situation to the Coach Association and terminate Baldy's employment due to Jane being a gym member. Failure to do so could result in legal consequences for Frank's gym. At this point, my attorney will be responsible for sharing the incriminating video with the Coach Association's attorney. As a result, Baldy will be stripped of his license from the association. That's the latest update on the situation for now. Thank you for listening to me.